Welcome back to Around the Beat, HoopsHype's new show that gives you the pulse of every team. This week we'll be doing the Dallas Mavericks, and we're joined here by Grant. Is it Afseth? Is that how you say it?
You got it right. You got it right on the first try.
Awesome. I'm really happy that I did that because I have a foreign name. And I feel like people's names are like, their most unique thing about them. So I always try to get that right. But thank you, Grant, for joining us today. I'm also here with my colleague, Sam Yip, and we'll be talking, of course, the Dallas Mavericks. How's this NBA Cup, I guess we could say bye week, treating the both of you?
Really well. The Mavericks had a ton of home games to start, but a lot of road games lately. So definitely glad to be able to spend some time at home, and then doesn't hurt to have a home game right out the gate tomorrow against the Nets. So definitely been pretty solid for sure.
Sam, you were over in Los Angeles last night. What was that like in terms of watching the Spurs without Victor Wembanyama take care of your home team?
I kind of was a little surprised, I guess, in terms of Lakers came out kind of sluggish in a way. They were missing a lot of bunnies and stuff. But I think the big thing I took away from that was without Wemby, they still play as a unit. I feel like, Wemby's been out like a month and change or so. But they seem like they're a playoff. I feel like they're a playoff team even without Wemby. I feel like they're you got three guys, Harper, Fox, and Castle that can go downhill. Castle dropped dirty on the Lakers. And the Lakers struggle with athleticism. Guys that can go north and south and just go powerfully to the rim. Lakers have a lot of issues with that. I feel like in a way, the Lakers team now with Luka, it kind of reminds me of when Luka was the Mavs in terms of kind of guy they got to get around him. Once you get a little more athletic against him, you have a good chance kind of to compete with the Luka teams.
Speaking of those Lucas teams, Graham, what's your thoughts on basically everything going on in Dallas? And with that being said, what is the morale around the team? What is the vibes going on as this? It kind of seems like the season's starting to pivot towards turning the page from the rough start that it was to Cooper's playing well. Ryan Nembhard's doing his thing. Obviously the Derek Lively news is, awful. But besides that, on the court, it seems like the product's getting better. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, to start out, it was as rough as possible. I think they were 2-7. They also, before this last 4 games, or winning 4 games out of the last 5, they dropped to 10 games below 500 against the Lakers on the road. And then those were really interesting games in the last little bit. Cooper Flagg managed to make history in LA. I think he was the youngest player to ever have double-figure assists in a game. And then also the following night against the Clippers, he was the youngest player to have 35, second youngest behind LeBron to have 30 in a game. So he's definitely been having an uptick in his production. I think the style changes throughout this season have been very interesting for Dallas. They started out with no point guard, where they were challenging Cooper Flagg to handle the ball quite a bit. A lot of wings, not a lot of great shooting, of course, and then 2 bigs. And it was just really challenging for them to generate advantages, have good spacing, and then also a lot of turnovers. They were getting kind of run out of the gym as well, with teams not matching their size and just trying to push the pace. So I think naturally, as injuries have piled up and they've tested combinations, they've kind of settled into a style that has been more conducive to modern basketball and just winning in general. Anthony Davis at the 5, in my opinion, is definitely the best position for him to play. The spacing's a lot better. His versatility pops more defensively. And they've also, that Laker game that I mentioned where they dropped below the most games as they had below 500 at that point, which was 10. They also began the Ryan Nembhard starting point guard experiment there. And he's done a fantastic job in that role, really providing some great organizational skills as a distributor, and just really helping Cooper Flagg be able to not only be on the focal point of actions where he has the ball in his hands or getting screens set for him, but he's been able to set screens for Ryan Nembhard as well. So I think stylistically, this is the best brand of basketball that they played, and it's not really about the wins and losses by saying that. I think that's just not a coincidence that wins have followed that.
No, that's a really good way of putting that. Sam, what is your thoughts in terms of the Dallas Mavericks, and I guess you would say how the energy, or what you've seen in your opinion from the team since the firing of Nico, and especially from, I guess, a fan's perspective?
I feel like, well, I mean, I'm not in the Grant would be better for that, but in terms of like, I feel like the kind of like the dark cloud in terms of the fire Nico and all that kind of stuff is like finally gone, so the team can actually focus on basketball now. And I think that was the biggest thing, because like when Nico was still there, like even at the end of right when the Luka trade happened, all the way up till he got fired, the whole crowd was just talking about that. So you got the media just constantly asking Kid and everyone like about that, and you could tell like the players and the coach were getting really tired of talking about this thing. And then now like they can actually just focus on basketball. AD's back now. Hopefully he can stay healthy. And then you got the emergence of like Grant said earlier about Nembhard. They just didn't have. I think when they were like, I don't know why they tried Cooper at the one, like start the year, and then like why are you throwing like a guy right into the fire with like the point guard, like the hardest. It's kind of like a quarterback in the NFL. It's like the hardest position to play, and then like you can't throw him in the fire like that. And then like, and especially I think the biggest thing with, I think Grant wrote an article on this. The biggest thing with Nembhard is he doesn't turn the ball over like much at all, and like especially for a young guy like that's very, very useful. Where you can throw him in there, and then he's not going to be taking like a back to back and off. Like consistently he's going to be playing because he's young. He's still on a two-way right now, so he's gonna he's trying to get his. I think he will eventually get his standard contract. But I feel like the biggest thing, honestly, is from the fans. And Grant can definitely follow up on that. He sees it like every game, every home game. But I think the fans are kind of like relieved, that like Nico won't come back, Luka won't come back, but like at least Nico's gone, and like we can just focus on. I don't know, but are they in that point yet? Maybe if they go do a losing streak, but they're gonna start looking to see who else they can blame. Grant.
I definitely think it was, as you mentioned, a dark cloud. They were like, I think they gave it a chance right out the gate for the first couple games, but then once they really started to pile up the losses, the fire Nico chants, got louder and louder and louder. Even, to prove the point as well with clutch time situations, fourth quarter minutes, the chants would happen when the Mavericks were at the free throw line. And I know that really bothered some of the players. I mean, rightfully so. But from the fans' point of view, that was really the only quiet time that they could convey the point and really get their message across. So there was like kind of one of those unfortunate like clashes, if you will, which was why going into the season with Nico, that was just a rough decision, especially when you look back at the Mavericks schedule. It was almost like the NBA like unintentionally trolled the Mavericks because they had a historical amount of home games right out of the gate because they were one of the teams playing in the global games in Mexico City. I think they had like 5 in a row. That was like the most in almost like 30, 40 years, something crazy, to start a season consecutively at home. And I think they played, 13 of their first 17 games at home. So the chants got, definitely loud. They brought the temporary escape staircase out. I've never seen that for a GM to get away from his seat to get to the lower event level part of the arena. So it was definitely a very strange time in like a team history period at all. And like last year, as you mentioned, about like the chants kind of being a problem. PJ Washington had mentioned that the chants were, pretty much like bothering him when he had clutch time free throws as well. So that was something that carried over from last year. So definitely been a way different situation now. It seems like they actually are rooting for the team's success because they can enjoy the team's success. Like I know there was plenty of fans that felt like I don't really care about the Mavericks winning or succeeding until they fired Nico. So that almost became a counterintuitive rooting against your favorite team in a sense. And then now it just feels like more of a normal home atmosphere where like, I don't think the highs have been there necessarily, like where they're playing elite teams fully healthy. They're just rolling and the fans are super in it. So I don't think it's really gotten back to that like peak where you're, of the Luka era where you're used to like those back and forths, but it's definitely like a healthy home environment where they're definitely rooting for the team's success, like more of a normal NBA team.
I wanted to just ask a follow-up. Like you're on the road with them all season. So while Nico was still general manager there, did you feel like they were playing better on the road than at home?
Yeah, I definitely did. They even mentioned that, obviously, like the players don't get into it a lot because that's the tricky topic of conversation. But there was a general sense where it was easier to play on the road than it was on home. So that was definitely a very strange like dynamic to have, especially for how often they were at home to start out of the gate. That they just had a almost perfect set of circumstances to start this season in a whole, and that's where that point guard experiment kind of added to that as well, where it just made it a little extra complicated to be putting an 18-year-old through that while all these other factors are going on. And then, of course, ultimately Anthony Davis got injured as well. So just a really like tough set of circumstances that put them as far as 10 games below 500 at one point.
Speaking of being below 500, do you think that changes maybe the, I guess, plan or the expectations for what the future should be? Obviously, I think Kyrie can fit better with Cooper if they wanted to have a veteran around, but obviously with all the noise we know about AD, do you think a divorce or, obviously a trade is inevitable, or is that something that could be avoided?
I think honestly it's fluid depending on what offers come in. I don't think my understanding of the sentiment right now, I don't think it's like we absolutely have to get rid of Anthony Davis by any means necessary before the deadline hits. I think it's definitely going to be a matter of, is there a trade offer that comes through that we deem acceptable? And if that is a good trade for us to make to build around Cooper Flagg, then perhaps pull the trigger. But I think that's going to be a matter of external factors where, I know Shams Charania from ESPN reported a couple of potential Eastern Conference suitors like the Atlanta Hawks, Detroit Pistons, Toronto Raptors. But those teams so far doesn't seem like there's meaningful traction by any means of a great offer that the Dallas Mavericks cannot refuse. I'm been asking around, and there's more skepticism than optimism about Detroit and Atlanta as viable trade destinations because of various reasons. Like Detroit has it rolling right now. Like there's probably a reluctance to break that team up and complicate things chemistry wise with how the season has gone for them. And then Atlanta, they also have to solve Trae Young's future with their team long term. So do you go into the offseason where you have to give contract clarity to Trae Young and Anthony Davis? That's where it gets complicated, and they could get a potential top 3, even number 1 overall pick this year, where you're adding that next to Jalen Johnson, and that could be more appealing than really committing to somebody in their 30s like an Anthony Davis, where you have a lot of young talent already on this team. So that's kind of where it takes me a little bit to Toronto if we are really focusing on these 3 reported suitors, where you have a little bit of a history between Clutch Sports and Toronto's front office getting something done. Brandon Ingram needed to find money before he left the New Orleans Pelicans and was able to get, with the help of Clutch Sports, a deal done to then, go to the Toronto Raptors via trade and lock in a contract with them. So that's probably the best possibility at this time until like the willingness or interest level changes from some of these suitors overall. Just my general read of the situation, because Toronto's track record has shown they're willing to pay talent to acquire it, and they've also been willing to re-sign their guys as well and then deal with the ramifications later.
I wanted to ask about like Matt Riccardi and Michael Finley. Like, what's your understanding about like how are they navigating through this? Because I guess I read something about they're potentially could be the next GM of the team next year. Like, so they're like competition amongst them. Are they working together? Like, how does that whole dynamic work really right now?
Yeah, I think they're definitely very collaborative. Like there's times where Matt Riccardi is like more around the team, while Michael Finley is, probably taking care of things behind the scenes without Matt Riccardi and vice versa. So I do think it's a very collaborative effort. I think Matt Riccardi's background, doing all kinds of roles with the Brooklyn Nets in basketball operations capacities, I think he probably takes more of a hands-on role in terms of the like GM like responsibilities, if you will. But Michael Finley certainly is, another figure as well. Of course, as a co-interim GM, that is pretty important too. But I just think that's probably more like the more traditional dynamic. I would say Matt Riccardi handles that stuff more right now. But I think there is input, obviously, definitely provided from other figures as well within the organization. Like the final sign off, of course, will always be Patrick Dumont in that instance. But other people as well, like Mark Cuban is someone they can like seek feedback from. He can provide it as well. But Jason Kidd, that's someone they've really leaned on for like the input, because he's the one coaching the team on the floor, and his vision matters a lot while they navigate this situation. But that's definitely my read of the situation right now. It's kind of a balanced, like collaborative effort, if you will, where multiple perspectives without like a clear GM, like a permanent GM, if you will, being in place to provide that like kind of traditional clarity is kind of how they're operating right now.
Well, one thing I want to ask, the way that you put it is, Michael Finley, is he not really, I guess, a voice of reason, or someone whose voice has much influence or power on decision making in comparison to Matt Riccardi?
I'm personally not too sure, because they haven't really had to make decisions like so far yet. But to my understanding, like I think more of that like usual decision making, or just overall like GM decision process, if you will, would be Matt Riccardi. I think Michael Finley is a great relationships guy. I think he also has been someone that's done like scouting as well, like conference tournaments and things of that nature. So I think that's kind of the balance, if you will, with the interim GM tag. But I think both of them, they kind of like, I would say it's not quite like Nico, of course, where Nico was pretty much always around the team, doing like kind of the day-to-day stuff with Matt Riccardi. Like Matt Riccardi was someone who was always, he's always talking with players. He's someone that is making sure everyone, like from a relationship standpoint, like he's always communicating with them, making sure everyone's in a good place. And that was before Nico got fired. So I think he's got that like great rapport with a lot of people in the organization. I think the really important one that he has that rapport with is Kyrie Irving. They both were part of the Nets organization, at the same time in the past. And I think he's somebody that, can be, a resource for Kyrie, during his time with the Mavs.
Kyrie seemingly is, I guess, a more vocal, or I guess more leading figure or whatever. It seems like he has some sort of role within the organization that his opinion is highly valued. What is your thoughts on Kyrie returning and that whole Kyrie situation in Dallas?
Yeah, I think from the time he got to Dallas, they valued his input like very heavily. He was a key figure in challenging the team to play fast. They were someone who, at the start of the season, they were having Luka Doncic post up more than he ever had in his career. They were slowing it down, playing at like a near league bottom pace. I think they're like 29th in pace. And it was working. They were fourth in the West before the trade. But, big picture wise, that was key in them getting to the finals, was that push to really play fast. Luka make the throw ahead passes. Kyrie is someone who's always looking to like be aggressive in the open floor as well. So that was inspiration from him. Luka, took that seriously. He, cut weight down going into that season. And like from start to finish, they really showed, strong, progress in that area. And then they patched the roster together at that trade deadline with PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford to have the necessary depth to really tie the whole vision together, and just went on a crazy effective run after that deadline and went to the NBA Finals. But overall, like throughout his time in Dallas, he has provided input on roster moves as well. Like I remember, Grant Williams was somebody that he had respect for competing against the Boston Celtics before he joined the Mavericks, in the playoffs with the Brooklyn Nets. And that was somebody that he felt could help the Mavericks. And that didn't ultimately work out. They ended up moving him to acquire rectified that situation by ultimately acquiring PJ Washington. And but overall, that was a move, just an example of something that Kyrie has provided some input on. And he's someone that I think matters a ton to this organization. And he's someone that's provided a lot of developmental assistance to young players as well. Like Brandon Williams very frequently talks about the mentorship that he values from Kyrie. He's someone who grew up, really respecting and watching Kyrie's game. So having that type of name and pull really helps, with the young players, and gets an automatic credibility with them. And going forward, he seems like somebody that they really value to be a potential fit if they trade Anthony Davis or not, where, he's someone obviously it's going to help you win no matter what, like in the short-term future, after he comes back from an injury, or if they go through a pivot or retooling or rebuilding, whatever you want to call it. He's somebody that makes the game easier for Cooper Flagg to then, help him early in his career. And then I think it ultimately would just, like, long-term, whether he finishes his career in Dallas or not, I think would be more so a matter of what he's thinking he wants in his career. But for the next couple of years, it's just kind of what it seems like, where he's happy in Dallas and he's valued a lot. And they had a lot of high hopes for this roster build. But of course, it hasn't worked out with all the injuries that have piled up.
Speaking, go.
Yeah,
Sam?
Grant, I was wondering, in terms of like when they make moves or when they're thinking about making moves, does Kyrie always have input on that? Do they always go to? Is he one of those superstars that they always want to know what he thinks about, or is he kind of like for example, I don't know if this is like the Luka trade. Like, did he know about that beforehand, or is that complete? Like, how is that?
That I'm not fully sure on. I don't think he's been clued in on like every move they've made by any means. I think when they're like going into off seasons, like some players like, hey, what are some players that you think could help this team? Like that type of feedback. Not necessarily like a hey, we're about to make this move. Do you like it? Or should we kill it? Like that type of thing. Or yeah, I think it's more so like just the general idea of who are some guys that you think could help us. Let's talk about it. And, we can see how that shakes out and help us mold our offseason plan, if you will.
With Kyrie, him being obviously involved with the team, is he going to come back this season, or what's the plan there? I know it seemed like they're being real secretive about it. And most ACL injuries, especially with the time frame that he got it, most players in the recent history of the NBA would just take this season off. It's just, we saw with Sadiq Bey, I believe, who's another one that we saw with James Wiseman had a meniscus, but they basically had him the whole year. But a lot of guys that if you suffer it kind of like in the middle of the year, they just tell you it's best just to take that 18-month recovery instead of forcing it. What's your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think he's been working very hard to have a comeback this season. I think he very much wants to. That obviously the way the team has played out has kind of created uncertainty for what people think could happen. But I do know he's been, someone that's worked very hard to make that comeback. He takes a lot of pride in being able to show I'm an elite player coming off this injury, even like being able to attack it to where he could come back sooner than someone might think, like kind of defy the odds, if you will. But it's a complicated general situation because from that standpoint, because he doesn't want a timeline out there where if it's not met, then you're talking about a setback, and then that like adds some distractionary elements to it. I think it's more of like he's going to attack it, try to come back as soon as possible, but not have that external pressure to where we're discussing timetables, things of that nature. I've personally, like, from my understanding of the situation, have long held like the thought that there's optimism of a pre All-Star break return, but that's not ever been like super like that's happening. There's a set guarantee, like anything of that nature. But I do think the general mindset is to play. It's just a matter of like honestly when. Right now, like it's just up in the air as you mentioned. Like there's not timetables out there. There's not like a lot of hints as well because he's somebody that he works out so early that we don't really ever see him either. Like that, like he wasn't with the team a lot lately as well. That could also be part of the process for him working out to really attack that rehab, since that's not uncommon for a lot of Mavericks players. Like even Luka, when they would go on lengthy road trips, wouldn't join them in all the cities and all that stuff. But in general, he's somebody that you're not really going to hear much prior to a potential return, I don't think. I think it's something that might end up being more of a, he's ramping up behind the scenes, and we're not going to see like clear evidence or signs of it or a communicated message, because that's not really how the Mavericks as an organization operate either. And you kind of expect the unexpected, if you will. It's not a very helpful answer, but it's kind of just the general read of the situation.
No, but it definitely sounds like how Kyrie's career has gone, with always a little bit of mystery behind him and whatever he does. With that, you guys touched on this earlier, but with everything, Nico gone, I guess Mark Cuban being brought back in, or at least his opinion being brought back into consideration, who runs the Mavs? I know you said final say is Patrick Dumont and Matt Riccardi's making the basketball operations, but like, is this a collaborative effort? Is there a clear hierarchy? How does that whole situation work? Because it is, I guess, a bit more odd, as the basketball operations is kind of been a talking point for the media over the last year.
Yeah, honestly, for the most part, I don't have too much insight into it yet. I think we haven't really faced like much of a scenario where they've had to make like complicated decisions with the roster or anything of that nature. Like I think the upcoming move would be to kind of like, I'm assuming, cut Dante Exum whenever the timetable or schedule works for salary cap reasons, to then convert Ryan Nembhard to a standard contract, which is it's a lot of like basic like templatized, like you're obviously going to make this move type of decisions so far. But my understanding, I think there's kind of a collection of voices right now. I think Jason Kidd is somebody that I would definitely look at as someone who has influence on these decisions. Like Patrick Dumont leans on him. Like I think there's like almost like, I guess you could say, I don't know if this is a great comparison, but it's almost like a basketball cabinet, if you will, or council of multiple voices. It's not a very helpful answer on this one either. But I just think that's the reality that they live in, where you don't have that clear-cut GM where you're following his vision. I think this is more of a collaborative, collective effort to problem solve things that come up while they're navigating the rest of the season.
I don't know if you would know, but perspective, like when you look at Riccardi, you look at Finley, you look at Kidd, like is there a hierarchy there in terms of who he values opinions wise, or are they all kind of the same and he just takes whatever they say to him and he makes his own decision off that?
I don't know if like Kidd's opinion or Jason Kidd's opinion is valued like clear cut more than everybody else, but I do know from a basketball standpoint, his opinions, valued quite a bit by the ownership group. And I know Mark Cuban is providing input as well too. Like I don't want to make that sound like, Mark Cuban's the GM by any means, or Jason Kidd's the GM or whatever. But I just know that like, while they're getting through this, it's really, really important that the head coach has alignment on what they're doing on the basketball court. So by default, you're going to have to rely on like not only is he respected, but you are by necessity going to have to get through the season with his input value very heavily. So I think that's probably like I don't want to say like he's clear cut, like more important voice wise than the co-interim GMs, but his basketball input is very heavily valued.
I think the most interesting thing with this whole Dallas Mavericks situation is that this is a team, we talked about it before, that the construction of the roster was, I think anyone who understands basic basketball understands that you can't have a bunch of players who can't handle the ball play with one, especially when you're injured. You knew someone was going to be injured. And I love Brandon Williams. I love what he did last year. And I've been a big fan of him since I believe the Portland Trailblazers had him on a two-way. He is someone who, if there was 32 NBA teams, would be in an NBA rotation on a team if there was enough. He's been a guy, I think, obviously he's a reserve guard for them and he's earned his opportunity. But same thing with Ryan Nembhard. But no disrespect to them, it's not the right construction. But you talked about Dante Exum being someone that's potentially going to get waived. Is that just because I guess like the injury has caused him not to play? Is it still the wrist injury that's prevented him from not playing that he was recovering from last year? And also, what is Nembhard's contract looking like if they were to convert? Is that something that they're trying to do the salary cap gymnastics? And I know they're not pressed up against it in a way that they should be concerned, but I know, for example, with the LA Clippers, they're going to convert Kobe Sanders. They can't do it until Chris Paul, and the way they have to do it is on a certain date so they can just avoid the apron. What is that situation with Dallas? Because these are things people need to consider now when, they would love to convert him to a two-way, but there are salary cap gymnastics and that minutia that they have to consider, and there's certain dates that they can do it because of how pro-rating contracts work in the CBA.
Yeah, everything you just described about the Clippers, that's the situation the Mavericks face. My understanding is correct. I don't think they can do it until either I don't remember the exact date. It might be January 6th. I know some people have that as a date. Some people believe it's January 4th, but basically early January is when that salary cap logistics would allow them to convert Ryan Nembhard's contract to a standard deal from a two-way, but they also need to create the roster spot since they're at 15 standard contracts right now. And that's where the Dante Exum factor comes into play, because he's on a veteran minimum contract for 1 year, and he's going to be out for the season. He had a knee surgery in the off season where that wasn't actually disclosed, by the team, because they don't have to talk about that stuff in the off season. So it's not like I'm saying like super shady business or breaking rules or anything, but they didn't disclose it. So it was a little bit of a surprise because, going into the season, he was someone that I know Jason Kidd values him quite a bit. Like, he's someone he really liked and was actually about to start on the wing next to Luka and Kyrie last year in January when they were waiting for Kyrie to come back. And he played part of a game in Utah with all three of them and then had problems with his knee with bursitis. And that really impacted the rest of his time with the Mavericks after recovering from that wrist surgery that you had mentioned. And this knee has been a problem for him. And it's kind of where it's put him in the spot where, as you mentioned, they really needed the depth at point guard. They knew Kyrie was going to be out. And I guess leadership trusted Dante Exum, his body would respond well to the surgery. And it just never quite did. Like, everything I saw from him on a daily basis was, at shoot-arounds, he just had like casually dribbling the ball. Didn't look like I ever saw a return to competition workouts. Like, he never progressed close to that point of playing from just what I saw. So I think that's just probably the natural outcome that we can expect here when that date comes to open that roster spot, unless they have more creative ideas. Because I know it's kind of hard to move money mid-season, but you have to compensate somebody with draft assets to take, like guaranteed money and eat it during the year. And they have numerous guys where, I know they tried to move Jaden Hardy before they had to use the stretch provision on, to be able to open up that space for Dante Exum in the first place. So that's another context to take into consideration. They had to stretch Olivier Maxence Prosper just to be able to sign Dante Exum. So they really had to believe in this, like to create that roster spot to sign him and be the depth veteran piece to kind of tide them over while Kyrie is out. And that's really contributed partly to their struggles so far. And yeah, the next step will be basically capitalizing on this momentum that Ryan Nembhard has had and getting him on a standard deal, because they're burning a lot of the two-way eligibility days for some of these guys. Like Musa Cisse, I think he's used over half already. And Derek Lively is now out, for the rest of the season. So now this is a really kind of reminds me of last season. Not to get into all the minutia of that. I was very critical of that on Twitter.
Moses Brown? Yeah, I think.
Yeah, Caleb Martin. They hard capped themselves trading Quentin Grimes for Caleb Martin with 14 guys, on the roster. So now they have 2 guys out for the season. They lack the flexibility until early January with 13, available. Actually, technically Kyrie's out as well. So it's like 12 guys right now, and other guys are dealing with injuries too. So
Will they file a disabled player exception? Didn't mean to cut you off there, but you said 2 guys. At that point, you'd think they'd be able to get the disabled player exception at least for one of them.
Yeah, I think they will be able to with Derek Lively, if I'm not mistaken. That's something that I think will help them. My understanding of the rules is you still have to have the salary cap space to leverage it, if I'm not mistaken. So I guess with Derek Lively being out, I guess that kind of opens up more options for them. Because if I'm also not mistaken, if you're in a, like, just thinking out loud, if you're in the process of creating that spot, that gives you the spot, right? So you don't necessarily have to just.
It's like IR.
Yeah,
it's like IR. Yeah, you basically put them like in the NFL. Like if you're capped to the 53-man roster and you want to put them on IR, it technically creates a temporary roster spot till I think the NFL's 8 weeks. Here, the NBA doesn't have that. It's just, I think once you apply for the DPE and they approve it, because it has to, you send it to the league and the league has to go yeah, this guy cannot come back, because the NBA can deem and be like, this is a return to play injury within this season and we're not going to give you it. So if they do agree with it, then yes, I think it basically, a guy gets put on NBA's version of IR, and now that roster spot has been made similar to the hardship 10-day exception before the 10-day contract is allowed.
So yeah, that I think is the next key thing to watch, because with that factored in, technically my understanding now is that you don't have to waive anybody to open that spot if you get approved. So I guess with Lively's, like, that new development, that's something that we should definitely on the margins keep an eye on for sure.
Yeah.
I was going to say with Nembhard, and you just touched Jaden Hardy. Jaden Hardy, how did he get into Jason Kidd's doghouse when he was kind of like not like an inspirational story, but they really had developed him from what he was coming out of the G League Ignite. No shade there. It was real strides that he literally had supplanted Tim Hardaway Jr. in the playoff rotations, because at one point where he was their kind of microwave scorer, he started to show some playmaking. So with you saying that they had tried to move him, would that, I guess, again, using him as a trade sweetener with Dante Exum, there's teams like the Brooklyn Nets, the Washington Wizards that could that be another avenue that they do to circumvent the salary cap, cap, by using him as a trade sweetener to create that roster spot to convert Ryan Nembhard?
I do think that's a possibility. I think his trade value is kind of in a spot where it's more of it's viewed as a negative asset right now. So I think they'll have to include compensation to move Jaden Hardy, or include him in part of a different move where there's the value is coming from somewhere else, especially because he hasn't factored into the rotation really this season to build up his value. And for the most part, I think it's been, as you mentioned, I think I remember correctly, it was like the Western Conference Finals mid-series. They wanted a spark, and they put him out there. He showed some microwave scoring ability, and that kind of provided some, some thought. Hey, this guy could build on this, and let's see where he's at next season. But yeah, last season he wasn't able to break consistently lengthy rotation opportunities. He had times where other players were injured. And, he had some moments, of course, but it never really developed into, okay, this guy is so good, we can't not play him. And I think that's just been his issue, where they've really wanted him to develop as a, a more of a point guard, skill set where he's able to make the low man reads. He's able to like really hone in on the shot selection. And I think that last summer league that he had played, it really wasn't what they were looking for. And I don't want to sound like that's like super important detail where it's like, oh, this guy's doomed going forward or whatever. But he just never really bounced back from that for a prolonged stretch to where they're like, there's clear developmental progress being made. And they just have always had enough scoring where they don't necessarily need like that scoring punch from Jaden, especially after replacing, like Derek Jones Jr. with Najee Marshall, PJ Washington, someone that can step up whenever other guys are out as well too. So there's times where they have leaned on that for that reason. Like he used to be kind of the de facto guy where Luka and Kyrie are out on a second out of a back-to-back. We're going to not only take Jaden Hardy from out of the rotation, but we're starting him on the road against Oklahoma City, and he's going to shoot the ball a lot. Like that used to be a scenario where he would get some looks at, but never like a consistent, like prolonged stretch where he was cemented in that rotation, for good. So definitely think it would require, some compensation to be able to move the contract.
That's a great way to put it, because it always seemed like they were trying to make him this point guard, which, like, I think to his credit for a guy who was a undersized shooting guard that had some point guard like skills, he really did make strides. But like, I think it was always capped at being a 6-man at most microwave scorer kind of guy. Sam, you were going to say something before I had rudely cut you off.
No, I actually thought of the Hardy situation. I just forgot to even like bring it up in this conversation. But like back to Nembhard, like I was wondering, like Grant, you see him you see him at practice, you see him at games. Do you see him being the guy that can potentially be their point guard for the future? Like maybe when Kai kind of leaves the team or retires or whatnot. Can you see Ryan becoming their starting point guard for the future?
Or is he a backup?
Yeah.
It's interesting to think about. I do think he has the talent level too. Like this is very like in the weeds discussing a player, but like I feel like I've never really like covered somebody like aside from stars that are just like day one, like as confident in their abilities as Ryan is. Like I remember talking to him at like, even this is how crazy this little like last couple of weeks has been. I talked to him at Texas Legends Media Day about like potentially coming, like what he's looking to accomplish when he does spend time in Frisco. Like obviously we know he led the nation in assists at Gonzaga last year. But naturally you would think like, okay, maybe, because I haven't really watched a ton of Ryan Nembhard throughout his whole basketball career. Maybe the thought is this guy can challenge himself when the ball's in his hands a lot to be aggressive as a scorer, like really test that limit. But he got opportunity at the NBA level, and when they needed him to, rev it up as a scorer, where they're deep dropping against him, going under against him, it doesn't even matter, like necessarily in that regard, where a lot of players would struggle, take kind of those like paint shots where they're not that effective at, and it would look rough, but because they're not willing to take the three, he'll still get to a spot against, even if you deep drop and go under against him, and pull up and knock it down very consistently. Like he's like got a really like underrated scoring ability, in my opinion. Like he's got a quicker first step than people might think. He's, got a really good handle. I think he's even shown the 3-point shooting strides he's made in the last couple of years. Just looking at his like efficiency, in college, he had a really good shooting, like 3-point shooting season to end his career. And he's really built on that. Like, and we've seen some juice off the dribble, like when late clock possession stagnate, he's made some really tough shots. Like even right off the rip against Oklahoma City, I think he scored like the first 5 points, and they weren't easy shots. And, like that's been plenty of interesting things offensively from him. I think, obviously there's limitations with his size on the defensive side, but I don't think he's really slowed them down or been like a big, negative to where you're like, they got to get this guy off the floor, just with how he can control the game on the other end. Like he's very calm, collected, doesn't turn it over, brings organization. He's someone that, works really well with Jason Kidd too. Like he actually just recently talked about like he really appreciates playing for a Hall of Fame point guard, and they have good communication sideline to point guard to stay organized throughout games. Like, he's not someone that gets rattled and loses control of the game. And I think that's a really great characteristic to have, obviously in general, but especially in a young guard who you didn't really factor in much as a day one contributor, but he just played so well even in preseason. I was compelled enough to do a video breakdown of preseason basketball because he had 20 assists to 2 turnovers. And I thought, this guy could get some minutes from day one. And they actually were confident enough to put him in the rotation on opening night. And that surprised some people. But he was just so efficient from that, right from the jump to where, Jason Kidd really wanted him in there. And then he got hurt and missed a couple weeks. So, the momentum stalled. They relied on Brandon Williams, D'Angelo Russell, those other guys to, handle the ball, and it settled back to Ryan Nembhard. And that's just a real testament to, his ability, obviously the roster as well that the Mavericks have right now, where they're waiting for Kyrie to come back. But I think he could be in the long term. I don't see any reason why he couldn't be a starter. Like, if we want to, obviously talk about if you're building a championship team, I don't know the answer to that. We'll have to see how high he can climb. But I talked with actually Andrew Nembhard, his brother, before the Pacers, Mavs game earlier this year, and they just both share this great confidence. And he had ultimate confidence in him as well. And it just seemed like, I don't really think he's doing anything different he hasn't done his entire life. It's like, oh, okay, well, I guess we'll just expect greatness from him, and he's checked the boxes so far. So I think he has the talent to be a potential starter in the NBA.
I think the cool thing about Ryan Nembhard was, you can ask Sam and I go to the G League elite camp every year and stick through the draft combine, just because I think it's really cool to be able to see a lot of those guys come from Portsmouth, which I go to Portsmouth, and it's just to see those journeys and to see those go through. And Ryan was a guy, ironically, like Kobe Sanders, that they just went through this journey. When you were watching the G League elite camp, the passing level he was just there, and he's smaller than me. Like Ryan Nembhard's 2 inches shorter than me, and it's incredible to see what he's able to do. And it goes to show that if you're able to not only ball handle, but be this sort of facilitator, which is one of, I think, just the oldest skills in basketball you can.
I think the best way to say it is that he manipulates the game for him to be effective and for his size, and that's very, very hard to do.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter how. I mean, obviously, I feel like if he's Spud Webb size, it might have been a little different. But him being, smaller stature than typical guards, he's able to do it because I think of that, and also how you said this irrational confidence and peskiness. He plays on the other side of the ball that allows him to stay on the floor and not be kind of a Isaiah Thomas, Facundo Campazzo, where they're just, no matter how hard they try, they're always just going to be a mismatch.
Yeah, definitely. He's someone who's very, very motivated to do the little things to help a team win games on both ends. Like, he comes from a winning program, and it's cliche stuff to say, but he definitely is motivated to do that stuff.
Sam, you wanted to discuss the inner workings of how the relationships.
First, can you just tell me about, in terms of Miriam Adelson, how involved is she with the team? Is she there? What do you see from behind the scenes?
Yeah, it's definitely mostly Patrick Dumont that's there. He has the governor title as well, so it's not surprising in that respect. I don't want to say she hasn't been to a game since last Christmas, because I'm not, to be brutally honest, I'm not fully paying attention every single game to make sure I spot her by any means. But that's the last time I remember vividly, her being at a game. So that's not to no disrespect to her by any means, but that's just to say she handles what she does away from the team, and it's Patrick's more hands-on approach. And even he'll spend weeks at a time away from the team because he also runs Las Vegas Sands or Sands Corporation, whatever the real title's called of the company, and they do a lot of business in China. So he spends stretches away from the team as well too. And it also helps now that the arena is more like for the team right now instead of against the team with fire the GM chants. So I think he'll probably be at more games, going forward. But he was at the game before Nico got fired against Milwaukee, for reference. And I think, obviously in hindsight that correlates to where, you're planning to fire the GM, of course. The owner, or governor is going to be there. But, I think there's been times where, for example, last season, before the season, they held training camp at UNLV. They have a lot of the Adelson family has a lot of influence in Las Vegas. And so, she spends a lot of time there, and they held team dinners, at least one of them, one team dinner at least at Miriam's house out there in Vegas. So she does stuff like that. I know like after she bought the team, she held one as well too. So that type of stuff, but not like hands-on, like micromanaging. She keeps a distance, and Patrick Dumont oversees the team for sure.
I want to get into too like geopolitics, but like people know Adelson's very like pro-Israel, right? And then Kyrie's coming on the other end of the spectrum where he's like pro-Palestine, and like he had the little thing in Brooklyn with the black Israeli, I forgot, Hebrew Israelites or something. And then like, how does that? Do they even bring that up? Like, what? Like right now, like what's going on? Do you think it can potentially become a problem with them too if things go sour or anything? Like, how's your? I don't think it's been talked about at all from media or anyone. So, have you even thought of that until I just brought it up?
No, honestly, like I don't think that's to my understanding, I don't think that's ever really, been a problem. I think like they keep it about basketball, and yeah, I think that's worked, for both sides, of course. Like Kyrie is someone who, I think he's had a successful tenure, with the Mavs organization, regardless of the ownership group that they've had in place. And yeah, to my knowledge, I don't think there's ever been a friction or issue. So if there was, they, I don't think it's ever like bubbled or surfaced to be a legitimate problem in a significant capacity.
So you would say like for now, everything's fine with them. Like like things can change on the dime in the NBA, especially like there could become a problem if Kyrie starts doing. You look at his track history, right? He's kind of done things, and then it's could it become a problem? Like maybe, right? You'd say you don't know right now.
I personally don't stay in tune with a lot of geopolitical developments, but I just know like throughout the situation that's transpired in the Middle East over the last like year plus, however long it's been. I know many years. Obviously, there's been conflicts, but I think if it's been good up to this point, I don't think I think Kyrie's in a spot in his career where I don't anticipate that ever.
You think being like at this point he's kind of picking his battles in a way, like he's not like how he was younger.
Yeah, I think a big part of it is when it impacts your ability to play, and I think that's really the big thing. Like with the Brooklyn Nets, like it's hard to get through a situation whenever you're like basically not able to play every game, and the people making money from the situation have to make tough judgment calls, and then you have to make a tough judgment call from your kind of like personal belief. Like if it's something that's happening outside of the general like non-game impacting, like you can only play road games, like with the COVID-19 stuff, like that's just so complicated, or it's unavoidable, if you will. But if it's all just like kind of like your belief or opinions on like the things that are outside of the arena, if you will, I think that's I don't have any concern on that becoming a like an issue or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, I also just feel like just to go off of what you were saying, Graham, I feel like Kyrie is more, let's put it this way. I think the way he goes about promoting, or I guess expressing his views, is a bit different than since the Brooklyn, and I don't want to call it incident, but just what happened in Brooklyn. And Miriam Adelson obviously is aware of what the public perception of her beliefs. So I would just think even the NBA is probably aware of that. I think everyone just knows in terms of what's good or bad for business in what you put out into the, I guess you would say, the what is it, zeitgeist, the zeitgeist or whatever of the universe. So I just feel like they all know that they're just not trying to stir the pot and what. So I just feel like that's not something that would ever be broached between the two of them.
Yeah, that's kind of my understanding as well, where it's like, yeah, it's just not like a thing where it's like, okay, if we have a differing opinion, you're not able to play the game on Tuesday, like you're ineligible to play or
I'm
anything.
not signing your check.
Yeah, like that. That's just, the Brooklyn stuff was just so crazy because it's like local government and all that stuff. Like, if you don't comply with this, like getting like the COVID-19 shot, you can't play, and that's just so unavoidable. Where it's like, if your belief and you're entitled to your belief by all means. So like if you're dug in on the belief where I'm going to do what I believe is right, and the legislation's not going to change, and that's just the way the world's going to work for a while, it's completely unavoidable. And yeah, then you end up with a trade and all that stuff, and here we are today.
Exactly. I just think, again, everyone's entitled to what they believe in, regardless if we individually think that's right or wrong. And those people are making such salaries that I think, you can swallow on both sides your opinion to make everything kumbaya and have a decent working experience. And the other thing is like, if you're a Dallas employee, you're probably also wondering, does the owners want to keep this team? And I don't think any employees are like, not keep this team like in terms of selling it, but keep this team in Dallas, or are they working another angle to, like get it to Vegas or whatever it may be?
Going off what Cyro just said, I was really curious, Grant, about the whole lawsuit going on right now of the hockey team and the Adelson. Like there's like a whole legal thing that it's there. There's proceedings and stuff, but it's not really been discussed. Like what do you know about it?
Also, can I add to this? Casino laws in Texas, are those still something that the Dallas Mavericks organization, I guess the Adelson, the Sands Corporation, is lobbying for? As I felt like that was a big part why they bought the team, so they can set up that casino entertainment center around the arena.
Yeah, I do think I do know that they had a site in Irving where the vision of having which is where the old Dallas Cowboys stadium was, the Texas stadium for reference. They had a vision of the, like, as you said, like the entertainment district, the casino resort style real estate, extravaganza compound, or whatever you want to call it, the Mavs world. We'll call it Mavs world. They ended up, after the Luka trade, having like local city council stuff, and I might be butchering these details, but let's just say like the people of Irving were not more inspired to support the whatever needed to be supported to help that vision come to fruition. And I just think it's always been tough in Texas to get gambling, like sports gambling, casino gambling, all that type of legislation through. And I don't think that's changed. I think it would take quite a few years for that to come to fruition, from just all the little nuances of the situation. So I think obviously that's a big, motivating factor to own this team is you can tie it into the real estate element. Mark Cuban, his, part of his public explanation for selling the team was he could collaborate with the, Miriam, Adelson, Patrick Dumont, like this, like their expertise with real estate. And I mean, that in a perfect world, from their perspective, you make a ton of money by having that legislation come to fruition, and you're able to build, a place like that. Nothing's like that in Texas, untapped market, if you will. So I haven't really seen any traction for that. I think it's kind of stagnated in terms of the steps necessary to accomplish this. But they are going to have a development in the arena building process very soon, like early this next year. Like, which, I mean, I say that and it's December 11th. So, like, I remember during the summer, CEO Rick Welts, who helped the Warriors get their Chase Center, fully developed and built, as complicated as that one was. He came out of retirement to work with the Mavericks organization. Patrick Dumont, I actually remember, he toured Chase Center early, like in his time, like being part of the Mavericks organization. So they view that as like an inspiration. And I remember Welts in an interview, forgot the outlet, apologies whoever did it, but mentioned that we have like a 6-month runway where we have to get clarification on this arena for our future and have it solidified. And I think it's been mostly 6 months. It was in the summertime. So I think we should expect, for better or worse from their perspective, that progress on what their plans are, or at least a substantial development. But overall, with that Dallas Stars situation, that's something that's been really hard for me personally to follow. Like, I know, like, if you're trying to get a new venue, both organizations would like to get a new venue. I think it's a matter of basically getting out of responsibility for having to pay or contribute to renovations for a building you're not going to be like a tenant for the distant future. So you kind of have to play, like, I guess, if you will, legal games where it's like, hey, your headquarters is not actually in Dallas like the contract says you're supposed to. And it's like, well, hey, yours isn't either. You guys are in Vegas. Well, you guys said we're in Frisco. It's all just complicated for me because the Stars headquarters is where the Texas Legends play. It's at like Comerica Center in Frisco. And so there's when I go to cover, Legends games or whatever it may be, there is a plaque that says Dallas Stars headquarters, but they're renting or vice versa. I'm sure they're well aware, both sides, of the business arrangement here where they're operating out of the same building. So it's like weird that like all of a sudden this would be like a legal matter out of like a necessity. Like it's just weird. Like it just seems like a matter of like the contractual like process of I don't even know, like to get out of whatever they're trying to get out of, if you will. I have very minimal to no expertise, as you can tell, on this topic.
Yeah.
So I'm trying my best to analyze it, and I'm sure I am butchering the details.
So, quick question. I've always wondered this about the whole Las Vegas thing with the Adelson. Okay, so this is how I'm going to lay it out to you. We all know the 31st franchise is going to be the Seattle Supersonics. That's just kind of like a foregone conclusion. They're going to be the 31st team. The 32nd team, people assume, is going to be Las Vegas. I feel like Kansas City is a real dark horse in there because they have the College Basketball Hall of Fame already built that was for the Pittsburgh Penguins, and then the Pittsburgh Penguins were negged, and it's literally a state-of-art stadium, and the Koch brothers bought 15% of the Brooklyn Nets. They're the richest people in Kansas. Either way, it makes sense why, because they're already a minority owner. I digress. And it's a desert in terms of NBA teams being not near any of those areas. So
they have that great arena too, like Sprint Center.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's the one I just said. They built it for the Penguins, then the Penguins reneged on moving, and they built PPG Paint Arena or whatever. So they literally have an arena that's like 15 years old, state of the art, just plays Big 12 tournaments. My whole thought, though, with the Las Vegas is I feel like that is if gambling can never be achieved in Texas in the way that the Adelsons hope, would it be that if they do expand to the Vegas team, that it's kind of almost a swap where the Adelsons be like, look, we'll give whatever team that wants to buy the inaugural Vegas team, the Dallas Mavericks, and we get the Vegas team, and almost do like a trade, like you would read with like the Jazz and I think the Utah Jazz, or was it the Hawks and the Celtics? That there was one teams that literally switched ownership, and that's like they traded ownership. Oh no, it was the Lakers and somebody else. The Lakers with the original Redskins owner, I believe. That's how the first Lakers owner was the Cook guy. Yeah, that's how Cook, he traded teams, I believe, and that's how he acquired the Lakers, because he traded franchises with. But either way, do you think something like that could happen? Do you think the ultimate goal for the Adelsons with this arena project is to get a casino? Because that's their gig. That's their bag, baby.
Yeah, I do think that is the goal. I'm personally not too in tune on like the if we can't get this, what's the move sort of thought process there. But
is relocation like a fear?
I don't. They obviously you're not gonna allow that to be a like aired out fear and let it survive. But I haven't gotten a legitimate sense of a fear of relocation. But you know what I mean. Like you're not gonna let that like bubble fester, grow. Like you're gonna do what you can to squash that. But I haven't like heard legitimate like fears, if you will, of the relocation. I think that there's probably still optimism, if I had to guess, that they can get their original like priorities accomplished with the real estate development. But yeah, I probably need to learn more about the legal ecosystem, if you will, of the state of Texas.
Well, it's just such an odd situation, because we all look at this and we're like, we know the whole they would not be building an arena if it wasn't to put a casino with it. Okay, knowing them, they would just be like, "I will just renovate, do what the Charlotte Hornets are, put a little food bar, open it up, get a luxury boxes put in there, whatever it may be." But the whole reason we know that it's odd compared to any other sport team development or desire to develop an arena, that it's all tied to this casino gambling operation, because that's the moneymaker that they want to put in there. And Texas being one of the most stringent and anti-gambling states, ironically, you would think. But so yeah, I just find that interesting. So because it's just a saga that it's weird, it's or interesting, I guess.
I think bare minimum, if my mentality or analysis, if you will, probably my thought on it, if you are thinking from their perspective and you have no ownership of the American Airlines Center, they don't even own the parking lots. Like the ownership group that sold to Ross Perot when he sold the Mavs to Mark Cuban, he retained the parking lots. That was way before my time.
Shout out Ross Perot.
Own the parking lots. Yeah, so it's like that was genius by pulling that one off.
Kind of what happened to the Dodgers too. The McCourts still own the parking lots at Dodger Stadium, so they're still racking up a lot of money on that.
They're the real money makers, they say. So
yeah,
no, for sure. So I think at bare minimum, if you own this team or a franchise and you build an arena, you just having the development of it and having that tied to the asset, that helps I could be completely wrong, but I would assume that helps the value of the franchise by actually owning the arena, a great new arena, as opposed to being a tenant at the American Airlines Center. And then that would be valuable for you if you did have a change of plans to then sell a team. You would want to have an arena you own tied to it, and maybe the new owner is leasing it from you, or you're selling the building altogether, if that's a like a contingency or backup route where you at least want to grow the value of your asset that you paid for before, pivoting and parting ways with it.
Okay, this is so genius how Ross Perot did this. And shout out, by the way, I've always known who Ross Perot is because my dad voted for him, and I make fun of him for it, but he always talks about him. And then, like, what was it? SB Nations. Oh my God, the guy who does the charts. John Boyce made a whole documentary series about Ross Perot. By the way, Ross Perot Jr. is legally obligated to operate 3,000 parking spaces for arena games through Hillwood's home company or Hillwood's development company. And he has to always make 3,000 parking spaces available, obligated to ensure. And those are like lot F, which are conveniently located right in front of the arena. So they don't. That is amazing. That is amazing, by the way.
And because of the real estate element, there's been big apartment buildings built like right in front of the arena. Like it's a very odd, like just dynamic of like the development that's happened the last like 10 years directly in front of it. So there used to be like open space, but there was like these huge like apartment buildings like right across the street from each other, like just tons of development. So I'm sure they would love to get into a spot where they own it, they own the neighboring area, or at least the parking lots, to say the least.
Yeah, that makes sense. So like, you know, ostensibly, you would think that like they were just doing it for the gambling, but it's a lot more. But hey, Grant, that's basically everything we had. I don't know if Sam had anything else. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to do this. This was amazing.
No, yeah, I really appreciate you guys having me. Always enjoy reading the site, and always appreciate any time I see Dallas Hoops Journal on there, especially. Pretty decent stuff, I hope.
No, completely. And Grant, if you want to tell the people all your socials and places that you contribute to so they can find all of your work.
Yeah, for sure. When you have a crazy last name like me, you can find me just about searching my full name, Grant Afseth, on just about any platform. And a lot of my Mavs writing on dallashoopsjournal.com, and then some general NBA stuff on different platforms when other teams are not getting mad at me.
No, completely. And for anybody, those will be in the description, so you can just go ahead and click those. I'll add those there. Again, Grant, really thank you for joining us. And if you've made it to the end, thanks for watching Around the Beat. We'll be back next week.
Thanks, Grant.
Yeah, thank you.